Okay, I'm recording now, so that's it. This is the review. That's all I have to say.
Yep, we're recording.
Yep, we're recording, and I have nothing to say about this movie.
Just 4 hours. You got nothing to say.
Honestly, I think I'm gonna let you kind of lead the charge on this conversation, because if I'm being honest with you, you watched it more recently than me. First of all, because I watched it the day it launched, which was like 2 weeks ago now.
Like
better
March 18th.
Better late than never, right? But and even then, I was forgetting the first hour of the movie in hour 3 of the movie. So I'm gonna kind of let you lead the charge on this one.
Okay, because all right, no pressure there.
Yeah. What I don't know. What'd you think of the movie overall? I guess
It's all right.
it's all right. It's fine.
Kind of the middle area of all right, like a soft 3 stars. Yeah.
Out of 5.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like 3 out of 10. That's very low.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
they're all in movie criticism. There's only 5 stars in the whole world, in the whole galaxy.
Yeah, it's Johnny Depp,
J.K. Simmons.
Anyway, the joke is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, my impression of it when I watched it was, hey, this is better than I was expecting. Especially like the first, I guess, half of the movie. I was like, this is kind of interesting. They seem to have taken the scenes that worked and expanded them a bit, and they added a bunch of scenes of like Cyborg that really worked for me. Like they really emphasized, not only does he have more of like a reason, like you see him being a hero more, but you also realize, wow, this guy is a demigod. Like, this guy is legit, and his powers are enormous, which I don't think I really got that impression from the Whedon cut.
Like, the most we got from the Whedon cut was that, like, oh, like, you're getting new abilities every day. Like, oh, you can fly now, or like you can punch super hard, or you can like sneak into Wonder Woman's DMs. But
you're a metal man.
Yeah, where this one is like, oh, you can play with the stock market like it was a yo-yo, or you could log into any security system on the planet to look at this woman on the bus and shopping and give her money.
Yeah. There's even that scene in the movie where he just goes into this random lady's bank account and just gives them money. Like,
yeah, that whole scene, like, that is actually like a standout scene for me. Just like, I was like, whoa, that is very well done. Like, I did not expect a scene like that. The thing that kind of soured it for me, though, that so like shortly after that scene is when Diane tries to reach out to him, and it's like, oh, like, we need to talk about Justice League to like save the world, and he's like, fuck the world, which I don't know, that didn't really vibe with the kind of character they established in that scene of him like wanting to help that woman. Like, no one would really say fuck the world when they also like want to help someone the way they did with all that power.
Yeah, and that's kind of like Snyder's inconsistencies. Like, he's so like that in every movie he makes. He's like that, where his characters are just so inconsistent. He cares way more about making a movie look cool and having an interesting sort of premise, but like he always, the characters are always second to him, it seems. At least that's my impression. Like, every movie I've watched, it just seems like character to him comes second. It always seems like an afterthought.
Yeah, exactly. And in this movie, and even in the Joss Whedon cut, like, what the whole status of what the world feels, or what certain characters like Bruce Wayne, what their feelings towards Superman is. It's very inconsistent. Where in Batman v Superman is like, oh, like he's a hero, but also he's a threat to the planet. Like, does the world need a Superman? Like, oh, like all this stuff. It's a topic of debate. It's like, oh, like Superman exists. So what do we do now? And as soon as he's gone, everyone treats it like he was always beloved, like throughout the whole time, especially with Bruce Wayne in this and the original cut, where he's like, oh, the world needs Clark. Like, oh, everyone misses Superman. I miss Superman. But the last movie, you treated him like he was absolutely going to be a threat.
Yeah. Also, like, the concept of time is weird in this movie. Like how long has it been since the old Superman has died? Because yeah, I guess that would probably be the case if Superman died and he died heroically. Everyone would kind of be like, yeah, that's cool. You know, you don't know what you have till it's gone, you know,
Like,
sort of thing. What were you saying? Oh yeah, concept of time. Yeah, it's just it confuses me because it seems like they took some time to like get everyone together to build the league, but then it also at the same time feels like it's been like a day since he died. I don't know. It's very confusing to
like
me.
it seemed
It's unimportant, I guess, but like it's just
it is, but it is unimportant. But it's kind of weird where it like this cut at least, or even the movie in general, takes place soon enough after his death that like Steppenwolf was like, oh, there's no Kryptonian to defend this planet. Now is our time to strike. But also soon after, like later after the fact, enough that people could be like, oh, I miss him. Like, oh, he's been gone. Like the world is ravaged now that he's gone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very very strange. I will say though, like everything I liked from the Whedon cut, I've come to realize was Snyder stuff. Like
Yeah.
like the scene where like Superman sort of sees Flash when Flash is in that weird like sort of flash zone
Yeah.
or whatever, and he like kind of sees him running. That was a Snyder thing. Also, like the scene with Flash where Batman throws the Batarang at him. Like I like that scene in the original version too, minus the brunch thing, and they took the brunch thing out. And
Yeah.
it brings up like a question, sorry, but like it brings up this question of like, did they just like do reshoots, just like, hey guys, come back, we're gonna go back to this place that we already were, just to record like one piece of dialogue that's just like a joke?
No,
Like,
they just took Ezra Miller and took him to like a green screen room and put him in the same costume to just record that against a green screen of that set, and then have old footage of Ben Affleck reacting to a line that he's not hearing. And
no way.
I,
You think that's true?
no, it's true. Like even because
No.
no, the thing about
No.
because I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to watch the Justice League before or after the Snyder cut, but I felt like watching it before, so I think the contrast would be starker.
Right.
And yo, holy shit! Like back to while watching the Snyder cut and the Justice League back to back is a really good lesson in what like a movie studio, what executives think makes a good movie, like what makes it more commercially viable, what makes it like audience pleasing. Which of course, like making the tone lighter, making it a lot shorter, and like adding a lot more jokes.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just they were like, hey, you see what Marvel's doing right now, where they're just all their movies are basically a giant joke. Even like Endgame, where it's a pretty serious topic, like half the world is dead. There's a lot of jokes in there, and a lot of funny jokes even.
Yeah,
But I think the difference between that and this is the people directing that movie from the get go are known for directing comedies. Like that's their thing. Or like
yeah,
Taika Waititi, like that
like
guy's he's a comedian. Like that's why it's funny. Like that's his style. But
yeah,
Snyder's style is not that. You know, like
like him directing comedy is coming from the perspective like, oh, I have to make a grand epic, and grand epics usually have moments of levity and like comedy. So I have to come to it from that place, not so much a place of actual comedy.
Yeah, because there is a couple like jokes, not like haha jokes, but like there's a couple jokes in this version that I think feel more natural and like fit the tone of the movie. Because
they landed a lot better here than they did in Batman vs Superman, as far and few between as they were. Like the whole
I don't
part when
remember a
Batman,
joke at all in those movies.
no, when Batman saves Martha from the
Oh
guy with
yeah,
the flamethrower, he's like, "Oh, I'm a friend of your
I could
son's."
tell
Like,
because of the
oh,
cape.
okay. Like,
Yeah,
what was that for?
yeah, that was weird. I think that was
Or like, I thought she was with you.
I think that was Snyder like being like, okay, the problem's been resolved now.
The tension's broken.
Yeah, the tension's already broken, so now let's joke, even though Batman just murdered like 20 dudes out in the hallway a
Like
couple
throwing
seconds ago.
a huge crate at a guy's head and then just blood spattering on the back.
Yeah, yeah. But
Sidetrack, my favorite part in all of Batman vs Superman is when you first see Batman and he's behind that dude and he's like crept up against the corner of the ceiling like the fucking Jim Carrey Grinch.
yeah, that's true. He is. Yeah, I will say the plot of this movie was really hard to follow. I don't know if that was just me, but like I felt like there was a lot of things that were just like he needs this equation, and it's like why, and it's like, well, that's the equation that does the thing, and it's like, why does it do the thing? Because it does. And it's like these mother boxes summon this thing, and it's like, why do they do that? Because that's what they do. And it's like, but what? Why?
Like both cuts have pretty much the exact same plot, like the exact same story. Just
Sort of,
one
yeah.
is overly long. Like the one is, the word for the Snyder cut is indulgent.
Definitely, definitely. And
Like
I will
110%.
I will say I'm okay with that for this particular film because that's kind of what we signed up for going into it, I think. Like we all knew like there were so many scenes in there that I think even like if Snyder released this theatrically, he would have cut a lot of the scenes out, like a lot of or he would have condensed some of them. Like he would have made that decision even if he was releasing a theatrical cut of this movie. But since it was this HBO Max thing, he's like, if I shot it, it's staying in. Like I'm not editing a goddamn thing.
Like
in
people
fact,
are going to watch this at home and pause it at their leisure. So if they're going to have this time to watch it, I'm going to give them stuff to watch.
I think like the greatest example of that is the prologue of the movie, which I think is equally or easily the worst part of the movie, or the end, right?
The epilogue.
The epilogue. I'm sorry. Yeah, the epilogue of the movie was easily the worst part of the movie because it just felt so tacked on, and so much so that like Snyder definitely just kept things in because he's like, I shot it and I'm keeping it. Because I heard that scene with Martian Manhunter at the end was originally supposed to be Green Lantern, but the studio was like, no. And he's like, okay, well, I'll put in Martian Manhunter. And it's like, why don't you just cut it out, you weirdo? Like, just don't put it in the movie. It's such a weird thing. And like that scene between, I don't know how you feel about it, but the scene between Batman and Joker in that nightmare universe, I fucking hated it. And to me, it confirmed that Jared Leto was never going to be a good Joker. Like, I thought it was horrible and just so ham-fisted and like just not even enjoyable at all. I don't know.
Like, the epilogue really did end the movie with a sour taste in my mouth because like the end of the part before it where it's like, oh, they're all standing triumphantly, like, all right, good, that's a good place to end it. Then epilogue, oh, okay, I guess they got to do that. Then they had the actual ending where it shows each of the members doing what they're doing with Cyborg's dad's recording voiceover, and like ends with like Superman showing his shirt, like ripping his shirt and everything. Then you had what was like the post credit scene with Lex Luthor and Deathstroke and everything. I'm like, okay, give it that. Then it just goes to the nightmare stuff, which is a really weird juxtaposition where the scene before it is like, oh, like it's Deathstroke, like he's with Lex Luthor, like, oh, I know Batman's real name is Bruce Wayne. Haha, I'm gonna go get him. The very next scene is them like being buddy buddy working together in the nightmare realm or whatever. And I'm like, okay, this nightmare stuff is going on for too long. It's kind of boring and dumb. And then he wakes up from that and there's more movie. Like it's one of those movies like, does this movie have an ending? And it kind of brought me back a bit more
Turns out it
after the
doesn't.
nightmare stuff. Yeah. It brought me back a bit more after the nightmare stuff with the Martian Manhunter scene because I just really like Martian Manhunter and I like that actor. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but
it made
to
this movie
me,
feel
that
like too well overly long.
that Martian Manhunter scene, that feels like a big reveal, but like we had already gotten that big reveal earlier in the movie with Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, with Martha Manhunter.
Yeah, with Martha. And also, I will say, I really like that scene between with Martha and Lois. And I feel like her turning out to be Martian Manhunter kind of ruined that scene.
Yeah.
It was like, what? Because that was, to me, that's like, oh, that's like an emotional moment between a widow and, his widowed mom, or her widowed mom or whatever.
Yeah. And it kind of puts the thought in your mind that, like, are all the other parts that you see Martha Kent in the movie, is she also Martian Manhunter there? Like when she's
Clark loving on Kent, yeah,
yes,
Clark or like, whatever,
is that Martian Manhunter?
I don't think so. I God, I hope not.
Then if it wasn't, then where was she actually throughout this movie?
But my question is, what the fuck needs to happen for Martian Manhunter to like join the battle? Like, what else needs to happen for this man to be like, okay, I'm gonna hop in there and help out? Like,
yeah, so you're right. Like, Man of Steel, like General Zod is
right.
like terraforming the Earth. He's like, no, I'm not going to do anything. Then Batman vs Superman, Doomsday, and like Lex Luthor, like, oh, Superman dies. It's like, nope. Then in this movie, Steppenwolf and like all these parademons are threatening to destroy the planet. Maybe I'll help out next time.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's such a weird... Because like Flash, it makes sense. It's like this guy, he's just some dumb kid. He doesn't really understand his powers fully. He has
a different prerogative. He wants to go into criminal justice.
Right. And Cyborg wasn't a thing until recently. And Wonder Woman was there in Batman v Superman. And, to our knowledge, she was probably in like England or whatever when the stuff was going down with Zod. So maybe she just
being like a museum curator.
And I guess she can fly.
I don't know. That's just thing about Wonder Woman in general. Like even outside of these movies, like can she fly sometimes? Like
depends on who's telling the story, I guess.
Exactly. Is she depicted more often being able to fly than not, or vice versa?
But I think 1984, like,
came out in 2020.
Yeah, came out last year. But like, that movie says she can fly now, right? Because like Steve Trevor is like, oh yeah, I can fly this very modern jet, even though I've never seen any of these controls.
Even though I'm inhabiting this presumably stranger's body.
Yeah. Oh, dude, and she sleeps with him. We're not talking about Wonder Woman. Anyway. What was like a standout scene to you, I guess? What was like the scene that you're like, that was pretty fucking good? Because I've got one of those for sure.
See, for me, it was. Let's see, let me think, because there's a lot of movie. The Cyborg part where he's like showing like grace onto that woman by like giving her all that money. The Flash, not Quicksilver scene was cool. Like just because like, oh, like he's so fast, he like destroys his shoes. Like that was a cool shot. I just like Martian Manhunter. Um, what else we got?
To me, the my like standout scene, even though it was kind of a weird one, but I liked it a lot. It's probably my favorite scene of the entire movie, and ultimately, I think like it's worth watching this movie for this scene, and it's that scene with the Flash, which you sort of mentioned there with the shoes ripping off, where he's like in
Yeah,
the dog shop and he has to save what's her name?
something West,
I forget
Iris
her.
West.
Yeah, I think that's it. I forget her name. I should know these things. I have like a huge Flash collection, but like that scene to me was like awesome. Like and like the music selection was perfect for a
Yeah,
Snyder movie, and like it's all slow mo. Like Flash is such a perfect character for Snyder because the whole thing is slow
like slow
mo.
motion.
That's
Yeah,
like his thing. So like that's the perfect like I would love to see a Flash movie directed by Snyder. Snyder shouldn't have gotten Superman. He should have gotten Flash. Someone else should have gotten Superman, you know?
give
But
Flash all the Jesus allegories.
yeah, well, yeah, Snyder is obsessed with that too, isn't he? That's in all of his
Yeah,
movies too.
yeah. Which I will say, this Snyder cut is probably the most like like the most I've been able to stomach a Snyder movie.
I agree. Yeah.
Like as much as I kind of like Man of Steel, like there's not as much to it, and just by this movie's length, there's a lot more going on in Snyder cut of Justice League.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like some interesting character stuff that I still wish it was more fleshed out and made more sense in this movie. But
Yeah,
like compared to Man of Steel, where it's like, son, don't save me. I'm gonna die now. It's
don't
just
save the kids on the bus.
it's just like it feels like Snyder just like missed the point of Superman, or maybe he didn't miss the point of Superman and he wanted to turn it on its head, and I'd believe that too. But I am inclined to believe that Snyder just has a hard time understanding source material, especially with like Watchmen, where like he just
Yeah,
completely missed the point. Like he got the visuals down and the visuals are so cool in that movie, but like he completely misses the point of what that movie is. It's like these people aren't gods, these people aren't like superpowered, and but like he's like I don't care, I'm gonna make them superpowered, I'm gonna make them super cool, and you know like Snyder is just I feel like he's just so caught up in making things look cool. I don't know.
like I'm not so sure if I would say that like he doesn't get the point of source material. He just tackles it in a different and more often than not poor way.
Yeah.
In that like he gets the source material and like he can understand it fine. He just chooses not to stick to it. He sees it as like a starting off point.
Which is fine.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
perfectly fine.
that's what the MCU does, you know, and like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine. But
It's
like
just Snyder putting his Snyderiness, like him himself as a director, not DC, not the material.
right, and obviously I don't have a problem with that because you know the Dark Knight trilogy is really not based on anything. It's like loosely based on Dark Knight Rises or whatever, or
Yeah,
Dark Knight Returns, but like it's not. It's not at all. It's its own thing, really. And
yeah. But I think Snyder, like more like through a lot of aesthetics and through a lot of story beats, is very much wanting to like adapt or even elicit memories of very specific like moments in comics and stories. Like in Batman vs Superman, you had like Doomsday and like the death of Superman, and
right,
like his whole approach to Batman is like Dark Knight Returns and everything. And
you know,
this
and
kind of
go ahead.
this
Sorry.
this this kind of brought me to the point that I really wanted to bring up in this video, which is the only time I'm going to mention live action Disney remakes in this video, is that for me, like a lot of the problems with live action Disney remakes are that they kind of rely on your memory and your recall of the original in order to get the emotional response out of the remake that it wants you to have. So, like, for example, in the Mulan remake, they play like, oh, the song Reflection in the score, which if you're watching it like just the remake by itself, you're like, oh, that's nice music. Like that's the theme established for this movie. But the movie wants you to remember that's a song from the original, and like it wants you to place like the characters and like the story and the emotions that you had watching the original and from the original onto this one, so it doesn't have to do that work like for itself. And at least with this movie in particular, and a lot of the other, like this movie and Batman vs Superman, it does a lot of the same in terms of comic material. With really the point of the Joker killing Robin, and like the whole thing was like why did you send a boy wonder to do a man's job? And Bruce Wayne dealing with the death of Robin, which a Robin we haven't even seen, that we haven't
Yeah.
even met.
Like, why
Like,
am I
so
supposed to care? Like, yeah.
yeah. And a lot of and this is about Snyder as a director too, that he just puts things into the movie because he wants to, even if they don't really make sense for the moment or the movie at present at all. And really that's what the whole nightmare stuff has been reading off as to me, where like he just wants to put it in because it looks cool. And all the moments of like Dark Side, like looming over Superman, over Lois's dead body, like that has nothing to do with the movie going on now. It's just something he wants to put in because it's a striking image. And we, as people that are familiar with like comics lore and like these different stories, we're supposed to attribute our feelings towards those stories onto this movie, even though the movie by itself, it doesn't make any sense. Like, we're not like, how are we supposed to care watching the movie on its own about this dead Robin that we haven't met? No, it relies on us knowing that there is a dead Robin because of comics.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's like he expects you to like understand this, and that's fine. Like, I like it when a director, is like, the audience is smart, they'll figure it out. But that's because, that's what he's doing is different than that, though. What he's doing is, I hope you've read these comics. I hope you know, because like, imagine going into this and absolutely dick all about comic books. Yeah. You'd be like, or like, and this is a fantasy world where someone doesn't even know who the fuck Batman is, right? Yeah. And they watch this movie, they'd be like, what? Where like, I feel like Marvel does, not to make this like a Marvel DC pissing match, but like, it's hard not to talk about Marvel when we're talking comic book movies. But like, Marvel kind of does that sort of thing too, where they're like, hey, this is a direct scene from the panel, but they're like, but it also makes sense in context of our universe, and we're not we're not relying on this to tell our story, where it just conveniently fits into our story, where he's like, I'm relying on this imagery to tell my story, and I hope you understand it. But then he like deviates away from the source material anyway, and it's like, dude, I don't even understand what the fuck's going on. Like, it's very confusing, push and pull with Snyder.
Like the scene that came to mind when you brought up like bringing elements from comics that fit nicely into movie is Spider-Man Homecoming, when there's that part where he's like under all the wreckage and like he wants to give up. He's like, no, like, and he lifts the wreckage out from underneath him, like from over him. Like, that scene is very similar to that very famous comic scene where the same thing happens, but the context of the two scenes is very different.
Right.
It's the same moment. Or even stuff like the Hulk being on like a gladiator world, like being Planet Hulk. Like, it's different than it is from the comics, but like, it's cool to see. And
right.
They recontextualize it.
Right. And Snyder can, and maybe I don't know if you're ready to get to this point yet, because I kind of want to talk about like the restore the Snyderverse people. But like Snyder keeps saying in interviews, like I've listened to a few interviews with him since he's released this, and he keeps talking about like, oh yeah, I had plans for 2 more movies, one where we go into that hellscape and we finally see what that hellscape's all about, the dream world, and then the final movie would be where you finally get to see Superman as like Superman. And it's like, okay, like that sounds intriguing, I guess, but like, dude, you had 3 movies.
Like you
already.
want us to wait for like 5 movies to see Superman be
It's
Superman,
yeah, it's pretty presumptuous that you would think that you'd get 5 movies to do this. Like
or
most
expect people to like go along with you for 5 movies to get like just bare bones Superman.
yeah, and like Nolan only had 3. I'm sure they would have let him do more, but like Nolan had 3 movies and he told a full story. Like
Yeah,
most people think in trilogies, right? Like 1, 2, and
yeah,
3, right? It's so weird because now he's doing this thing where he's like, yeah, I wanted to do my Justice League trilogy, and it's like, bro, you have a trilogy and you fucked it up. Like this is
yeah,
like you fucked it, dude. Like Man of Steel was like Skybeam, Batman v Superman, Martha, and then whatever the fuck this was. Like I don't dislike Snyder. Like I think he's a talented cinematographer and like has really cool visions, but like
like he's a good filmmaker, just not a good storyteller.
right, yeah. Dude, if he had like a partner, like if it was him and Nolan, because where I think Nolan kind of lacks is in some of that like interesting framing and like cool cinematography.
Yeah,
Because I think Nolan a lot, and I may get a lot of hate for this, but I feel like Nolan just kind of like half-asses it sometimes when it comes
hmm,
to framing and stuff. But he's really good at telling a story, and like
yeah,
that's what he's all about. Where like Zack Snyder's the complete opposite, where this dude like just sucks at telling a story, but like his imagery is just like out of this world. Like if those
yeah,
two partnered up, like I feel like they co-directed a movie, it'd be the most kick-ass movie, you know?
yeah. Like I feel like that has the potential to be a really good movie.
Yeah, and I know they're friends. What I'm saying
Yeah.
is, you guys should listen to me and fucking do that. That'd be sick. How do you feel about the restore to the Snyderverse?
Like you said, he's had 3 movies, and especially Batman vs Superman, it underperformed. So
Yeah.
from a business perspective, it's not really feasible.
Well, and even Man of Steel like underperformed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They both made their money back, but it's like,
They weren't the big
yeah,
monster hits that they wanted.
and it's like Batman and Superman, like these are bigger than, like not to bring it back to Marvel, but like Marvel is making more money than Batman and Superman with Guardians of the Galaxy, which was an unknown property by most
Exactly.
people. You know,
Yeah,
like this should be a no-brainer. Like you're getting free marketing just by it being Batman and Superman, and on top of that, you're kind of hurting the brand by continuing to make this. You know what I mean?
yeah, and like, oh, what was I going to say? Like, yeah, just like they underperformed, and like the movies being continually as divisive as they are, and like causing this much uproar. I don't know if Warner Brothers really wants to continue on that. Like I'd much rather they do continue what they are doing, where it's like different like isolated universe stuff, where like people like directors have much more of a stamp on it. Like the Batman. I'm really excited for the Batman
Yeah, yeah, I am too. But
and
like,
the Suicide Squad.
do you think that they might restore the Snyderverse? Because I think what's and maybe I'm reading too much into it. It's like after they released this movie on HBO Max, I feel like the numbers were really good. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone's kind of praising Snyder, except for us, apparently. And even we're like, yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Um,
Yeah,
and then just today or yesterday, this week, they announced that they're canceling the New Gods movie. They're canceling the Trench movie, which was supposed to be like a sort of spin-off of the Aquaman movie.
yeah.
Um, do you think that's like as a result of this, and they're like, maybe we should kind of revisit these Snyder movies?
I feel like they will, but not in the way we're probably expecting. Maybe as
Like
kind of like what
continuing
Disney
this.
Plus did, like HBO exclusive stuff,
Hmm,
where like HBO like premiere Snyder DC movie, or like even a show set in the Snyderverse, kind of like how Disney Plus is doing like Marvel and Star Wars shows. While in the theaters, like the more like the movies that general audiences are more able to latch onto, like the Batman and the Suicide Squad, which seem very self-contained, those get like the more theater treatment.
Yeah. Well, I think if they're gonna do it like that, though, they're not gonna get Snyder.
Yeah,
Because they're not gonna pay him what he wants to get paid, and like the deal he has with Netflix, like
yeah,
I think it's gonna be hard to pull Snyder away from that unless they're like, hey, we want to give you back the Snyderverse, and they're gonna be like big theatrical runs.
which
What
I don't really see that happening.
I don't either, but like also I don't fucking know. DC is always making weird decisions. Like they're always doing the most unexpected thing where, like we're getting like a Green Lantern movie and then we're getting a Batman v Superman. I don't know, like it's so they do weird things all the time where like we're
Yeah,
still in the height of the Snyderverse and we get a Joker movie. Like it's
yeah,
so weird what they do over there at DC. So, and it seems like it's just so poorly managed because I know like they had like what was his name, Jeff Johns,
yeah.
and he was the head for a while, but before him they had someone else, and now I think they have someone else on the head, and like they're
Oh damn.
constantly like shuffling out these people, and like I know also I think like DC is in its own like production company. It's all just sort of under Warner Brothers. Unlike Marvel, where it's its own branch at Disney, and like Kevin
Yeah,
Feige is
exactly.
the guy, they don't
Like
have a guy
that's
at DC.
that's really like what the main divide is in terms of Marvel and DC, how their content is managed. Like Marvel is Marvel Studios underneath Disney, where DC is like Warner Brothers making stuff with the DC IP. And there's
Right.
maybe someone in charge of like brand management and like storytelling. There's not like a DC Studios.
There should be, because it's honestly wasted potential if they don't. Like there's like 100 years of back catalog to go off of here, just like Marvel,
Yeah.
and they were really smart to use it. I think DC should do the same. Now, here's an idea. I've got an idea. Here's what I want the future, and this doesn't need to be like the future of DC, but I want this future DC movie. Okay, Kong versus Godzilla just came out. Okay,
Yes.
now hear me out. Okay, we get a Flashpoint paradox movie or whatever,
Mhm.
where we get ripples in time, and maybe that's how they can explain away all of this stuff. Where it's like this is in World 2, this is World 1, the Snyder world, and this is in a different world, and then we could have all these branching continuities if they wanted to, which
Yeah.
which is fine. DC is known for this shit. Like they've done
Yeah.
this in the comic books forever.
Yeah.
Um, and that's fine. What I want is one of those branching realities. I want Ben Affleck's Batman to get sucked out of his fucking reality and put into the Kong and Godzilla reality, and I
Like the
want
monsters.
I want a Batman v Godzilla movie or a Batman v Kong movie, where Batman, well, yeah, but like it's Batman using his brain powers, where he's like, I gotta figure this out. How do I get through it? Yeah, I think ultimately it would be that. But Batman's a smart man, and you could make something cool and interesting out of it. Or maybe you do Superman. You throw Superman over there. Superman
Okay,
versus
that
Kong.
now you're talking.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Superman would just fly through Kong's belly and just make him explode.
Like if Godzilla stepped on Superman, it'd be like us stepping on a nail.
That's true. Yeah, Godzilla versus Superman might be pretty fucking cool because also it's like Superman is trying to defend the city, and yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'm into that. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I want. That's what I want the future of DC to be. But I do know there was like a
Godzilla
Batman.
versus
There
Superman.
was like a Batman Kong comic book like forever ago, and I want to see that. I want to see that movie. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome. What do you think? What's your future DC? What do you want?
Yeah, really just like I had a really good point I was gonna say.
Oh, I'm so
But
sorry.
yeah,
Cut you
no,
off with
no,
my stupid Kong tangent.
no, it was great. Like my life is enriched with the image of Godzilla Kong. I mean Godzilla Superman Kong.
Yeah,
But
ultimately, yeah.
I do like. Oh, I just remember the point, but I do like the route DC is doing now, where it's like, oh, they're more director oriented and like they're not all exactly in a big continuity because like you don't really need this big interconnecting thing to have people latch on to these characters. Where like for a while the MCU was like, oh, Iron Man. Like I love Iron Man. Iron Man was a great movie. And then Thor comes out, like, oh, it's in the same universe as Iron Man. I like Iron Man, so maybe I'll like Thor. And then so on, so on, so on. Like, oh, the Avengers, awesome. And then Guardians of the Galaxy, oh, it's kind of weird, but it's in the same universe as Avengers. Like, okay, so really the interconnected universe for MCU worked to the benefit in order to like hold people's hands and to introduce them to all these more obscure characters. Where DC, you don't really need to do that. It's Batman, it's Superman, it's Wonder Woman, it's characters that like everybody knows. Like,
Even the Flash and Green Lantern
yeah,
and
exactly.
Martian Manhunter, like these are characters that everyone knows
So
already.
like you don't exactly need like an interconnected universe to like introduce people to those characters. We just want them to like be brought together, which I
Right.
guess is what the Snyder cut really did. It's just like Snyder himself is just kind of making it difficult, like to make it feel gratifying. But yeah, just like I really just like the future of DC, just them putting out these movies and that them being good. They're not worrying about being interconnected because they've been doing a piss poor job at it so far. So they just stop it and just make the movies you want to make.
What I always liked about the Justice League cartoon, which is so kick
Yeah.
ass. I fucking
Oh hell yeah.
I love the animated series, the Justice League animated series. So good.
Yeah.
But
That's DC at peak.
oh yeah, absolutely. But like one of my favorite things about Justice League, the animated series, that I think Snyder actually kind of nails in this version of it versus the Justice League version, is that you always feel like those dudes in the animated series are on point. Like these
Yeah.
dudes are on point. They are powerful. These guys are not to be fucked with. Like these are the dudes. And you kind of get that sense in this one where it's like these
Yeah.
guys these are superhumans. Like these are, which is also why I think like Justice League works really well when they're doing space stuff.
Yeah.
They should really be doing space stuff, not Earth stuff, because
Yeah.
Earth stuff is for Batman. Earth stuff is for Flash by himself. Space stuff
Yeah.
is when you get all of the Justice League and it's like, okay, now we've got fucking Superman throwing planets at dudes and the Flash is making tornadoes out of fire and like
And like Batman's using like very smart missiles to like launch at like hordes of
yeah.
parademons or something.
Batman is Alfred basically in the spaceship, he's basically the informant and
Yeah,
yeah,
because
yeah.
he's the tacticianer.
Yeah. So I do like that, but yeah. And dude, there's so much good source material right there with those
Yeah,
animated series. It's like you should just look
exactly.
at those and like that's what you can do with your live action series. I know you hate
Yeah.
the idea of animated things being turned live action, but
No, like for an instance such as this, where like they're both based from comics, like I'm behind that.
yeah,
Like
because
it's not taking the live animated and making it live action to make it more adult to make it better. It's that the animated did so much good that like you're learning from it. Like you're attributing the great
I
storytelling
mean
from them
Harley
into the
Quinn
character.
is a great example of that. I mean, like we wouldn't
Yeah,
even
like
have that character
she
if
was created for the animated series.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and
But
I think like what people think of when they think of Batman now, it's not 66 Batman, it's not 89 Batman, it's not even Christopher Nolan's Batman. What people think of when they think of Batman, they think of the animated series Batman. Like that is Batman.
yeah,
And
like
maybe I'm biased, but I really do think people are like, yeah, that's Batman.
no,
You know.
like that is definitely my Batman, and that like kind of like Batman in the animated series is like base Batman. That's like my Batman ass Batman.
Mm-hmm.
But that Batman in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, that's like Batman at his prime. That's like top tier, like Batman will fuck you up, Batman.
I think if they're going to continue the Snyder cut, what they need to do is they need to jump like 20 years, and they just need to do Batman Beyond. That's what I think they should do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
If they want to continue this universe, just be like, all right, we're ending the universe with Batman Beyond, and that'll be a kick-ass ending. You know?
No, that would be sick. But the point I wanted to make earlier, it's just like it's just a really bad look for DC and how they're managing and putting out these movies that they are. That like even just now so far in 2021, Marvel put out a serialized like streaming TV show starring the Scarlet Witch and the Vision going through different eras of sitcoms and going to like multiverse like kind of as a big story to deal with like grief with these like characters where like a witch and a robot man. DC just now put out a Justice League movie that people kind of like,
Right. Yeah.
which is something we should have gotten like years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. We should have
Like
gotten that like directly after Nolan's Batman movies. Like we
yeah,
should have gotten that Justice League movie. Uh,
like we were
not
ready
that
for it.
no,
We
not
were
that
ready for it.
Nolan, not that Nolan should have directed it, but like they could have even continued using Christian Bale. I know Nolan would have fucking hated that and would have been pissed about it, but
Yeah,
like I don't know. There was a pretty good foundation there. They could have just continued with that. But I know Nolan would have been pissed. I'm sure it was that was probably more a political thing because I'm sure they wanted to. But Nolan's like, I will leave Warner Brothers if you do that. If you
yeah.
desecrate my creation. I'm
They wanted to
sure.
keep on good terms with Nolan so that he can
Yeah.
still be in their stable, making like Inception and like Interstellar and
Yeah, yeah.
Dunkirk and Tenet
Dunkirk.
and all that.
Yeah.
But
Well, and also I'm sure like getting I I imagine Christian Bale is like, well, if Nolan's not doing it, I don't want to do it. I'm
yeah,
sure that
exactly.
was another thing as well. But
But Joseph Gordon-Levitt's like, I'll do it. Like
I would be Batman.
the last movie said I was gonna be Batman, so I'll be Batman.
I'm Robin.
Like Robin's my real legal name. But the point I was gonna say is that after watching the Snyder cut, I kind of felt the same I did after watching the Joss Whedon cut, in that this is cool. Like this is good, all right. Like I would have been way more mystified by it if this came out like in the early 2010s or in the late 2000s, where like this kind of big superhero, like a superhero movie on this scale, or even a team up movie of this scale, was still new, was still novel. Like there was still a marvel to it. Where now it just seems kind of passe, where like we've had this before with the Avengers movies, and now Marvel's doing more like twisted stuff. Like you got Thor Ragnarok and just like into the Spider Verse and everything, like stuff that's far beyond what this Justice League movie is.
Yeah, and I think what DC is doing now, and it's smart in a way, but also sort of like I don't know if it's the best move for them moving forward, but seems like they're pushing forward with it. Is they're aiming for a more adult audience now, and they're like
Yeah,
that's our demo now. Yeah, our adults. Yeah, even the Snyder cut, that's rated R. Like I there's literally a
yeah,
scene where Wonder Woman crumples a dude, just and there's just blood on the wall. It's like okay,
and there's okay. That's what I was gonna say earlier. The like a standout scene from Snyder Cut for me, which added to the R rating when Amber Johnny Depp beater Heard was fighting was fighting Steppenwolf like in Atlantis. And there's a part where like she like sucks all the water and like blood from his face.
oh
Like
yeah, that scene was fucking cool.
like that was metal as fuck.
Yeah,
But
that was cool.
but what was I gonna say? What were we
I
talking about? Oh yeah, the adult audience.
yeah
Where yeah, it kind of makes sense that like a lot of people that have a strong affinity for Superman and Batman are people like around our age that are more familiar with them with like Justice League cartoon and animated stuff that like
yeah
we're more and DC is more inclined and has done a lot of strong stuff being more like aimed at adults with like The Dark Knight Returns and like Watchmen and stuff like that.
Killing Joke.
And yeah, exactly. So the idea of like DC doing like R-rated, like skewing more towards adults, like that's exciting. That's cool. But there's part of me that still feels like kids can like Batman. Kids do like Batman, and like kids
Yeah.
need someone like a Superman, which I guess they do in Captain America.
And I think them skewing more adults is cool. Like I'm excited for that new Suicide Squad movie. Like don't get me wrong. Like I'm pumped for that movie. Like that movie's gonna be cool. And the fact that it's rated R is I'm fine with it.
Yeah, same.
But like I think as far as just like maintaining your brand, and you have to remember like your brand is superheroes. Like
yeah,
this is for kids, man. And like we talk about the comic book boom of the 80s and then the sort of downfall of comics in the 90s. And I think a big part of that was comics started heavily skewing towards adults and aiming itself towards adults, and the adults that wanted it kept going and they kept buying it. And then as they got older, they got responsibilities. They started having kids. They're like, I'm kind of over Batman, you know, like it's kind of, I'm kind of over this shit.
Kids but then, is like a reliable audience.
Their new audience, because you have to think about that too, and why comics have stood the test of time is because it's for all ages, really. Comic books should be for all ages.
That's what makes Batman being in a movie possibly rated R a lot more striking. Where like, oh, I remember watching Batman as a kid, and now this is like R-rated Batman. So, like, I gotta see it because if you always keep something like Batman as rated R, it just becomes like John Wick. Yeah. Which John Wick is cool. Don't get me wrong, but like, there's more to Batman than just him being just an R-rated like noir.
Yeah, and there's a whole conversation to be had here because it is such a slippery slope. Like, you don't want to take away from someone's like artistic vision. Like maybe their vision is like a more R-rated Batman story, but like an R-rated Superman just seems weird to me. But like but like even with like Marvel now, like not to get too spoilery, but like did you watch the new episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier?
I've only watched the first episode. I've been wanting to watch it with the boys, but we've been kind of slow on the draw with that.
Okay, well, I won't spoil anything, but there is like some crazy action scenes. This show is much more action oriented than WandaVision, and that's for sure. And that's kind of to be expected. Really great stuff in there too. But it's kind of like a weird thing where like there's a lot of death, but it's all like a dude gets a knife thrown at him, and you see the knife like hitting him, and then it just shows his back, you know? And it's like, I see what you're doing, and like there's still a lot of death in this. It's sort of like this weird sort of gray area. Like there's a whole question to be had about censorship and stuff.
Like it's because they feel like they have a lot more levity because it's like a show, like a week-to-week show. That like,
well, no, like this is still very much they're doing that because it's PG-13, right?
Yeah,
where they're cutting away from the actual deaths, and they've done this in Marvel forever, but like they're really pushing the limit now.
No, like even from the one episode I saw where like there's that whole beginning fight with Falcon trying to
get that dude.
There's like there's dudes like being thrown into canyons or like just free falling, like that man is dead.
Yeah. And there's a lot more to that where it's just like a dude gets shot in the face, but it cuts away, so it's okay. You know, and there's a lot of that shit. So it's like that's sort of weird too, but like also I guess that would happen. I don't know, it's so weird. But Marvel, when they're like, we want to do a rated R thing, they're like, hey, well, yeah, okay, we'll do it with Daredevil, who's kind of from his inception was a more R-rated comic book hero. Like
we'll do it with Deadpool so he can make like all these kinds of jokes and be like gory, be like torn in half and stuff.
Well, yeah, Deadpool is because like I think if you're gonna make like a Deathstroke movie, I think that makes sense too. Like an R-rated Deathstroke movie makes a lot of sense.
with like
Um,
the name with the word death in the name
yeah, yeah,
and
and
the word stroke.
but like even Daredevil, the blind guy, even from like his early stuff, where uh the Born Again series, that's a very R-rated series, and that's
Yeah,
way back from like what is it, like the 70s when that came out. So like you
that sounds
know
right.
there's always been some R-rated stuff in these comics, so it's kind of this like push and pull of like I want I want to be able to watch these. I don't have kids, but I want to be able to watch these with my kids. But like, I can't watch that with my kid. And but
Yeah,
like also, it's like I want to see these movies be more explicit. I don't know. This is like a whole conversation that I think a lot about, and I don't know the answer, and seemingly neither does DC because
yeah,
uh, they're constantly experimenting. And like Joker, they really pushed it with that one. I think.
yeah.
Uh,
Or like you
so
see a man, you see multiple get shot in the face, and you see them shot in the face.
yeah, because that's not like, because like even Deadpool, it's like that's cartoony, like sort of like violence. That's like
Like
video.
meat grinder stuff.
Yeah, that's like video game violence where it's like that's just stupid. Where like Joker, that's more like a psychological sort of R rating where like that they really pushed it with that one. But
Where he like kills his mom with like the pillow over her face.
yeah, that's like way more like um like a Kubrick sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's sort of that movie's so much like Taxi Driver. I mean, let's not kid ourselves, but anyway, that's that. I went a lot longer on that tangent than I had anticipated, but like
No,
it's
no,
something
you're good.
something I think about a lot. Like it's like, and I feel like we've been getting this like R-rated Batman, even though Nolan's Batman wasn't R-rated. I definitely think it was skewing for an older audience.
Yeah.
So like I feel like we've been getting this like older version of Batman, since 2000, what, 6? Is that when Begins came out?
2005.
2005. So like almost 20 years now we've been getting this like adult version of Batman. I'd love to see a more, you know, just kid-friendly Batman on screen again. Like
Yeah,
we've
but
seen
not like
it.
not like Schumacher, like kid friendly.
Yeah,
Like
more like Burton's, and you know what? Like even like Schumacher, but like not just like with a plot that makes sense.
and for a lot of people, like an R rating means like, oh, you could do a lot more like darker stories and have a lot more like introspection and like very like hearting stories.
True, I guess, but
Like like I guess, but like you don't have to do those things like just in an R rating. You could do those things in like PG or PG 13.
yeah, we see it in
Like
Pixar movies all the time.
exactly in Pixar
Yeah,
movies and like the animated series. Like there's a lot of like hard hitting storytelling in the animated series that I cannot for the life of me imagine them doing in like a DC live action movie. Like there's that one episode in the animated series with I forget her name, but like Robin finds this girl and like tries to save her and like falls in love with her. And it turns out she was part of Clayface. Like she was like a split off consciousness from Clayface, and then like she gets absorbed back into Clayface, and she's essentially dead. And
yeah.
like
Well,
you're not going to see that in a movie.
yeah. Well, and even like the Joker stuff where like he puts the Joker face on those people, like that's still a very striking image for a
Yeah,
kids show. Like
yeah,
that still haunts me.
that would honestly be a bit more horrifying to see in a movie like Joker or like the Snyder movies than just oh he shot him in the face.
Right. Yeah.
Just
And like
seeing like this really like cool like makeup done where just someone's just like that would be intense.
yeah. I guess what I'm saying though is like we've seen the dark introspective movies now, and seemingly we're getting another one with the Batman, which I'm very excited about. I'm excited to see what
Yeah,
Robert Pattinson brings to the table.
yeah,
But like I'd kind of like to see a little camp brought back to Batman, you know?
yeah.
Like
Not too much because we've seen what that can become.
yeah, not the 60s sort of camp, but
Or
maybe a little,
or Schumacher.
yeah, maybe even a little bit of that stuff though,
Like
like
again, the animated series has the perfect amount of camp.
I agree. Yeah, cuz there is some like stupid lines
like
where
my aviary of doom. Like there's
yeah,
still a lot of theatrics and
yeah,
like grandeur in there, but there's still a lot of introspection and like mood to it.
yeah. I just like to see something done differently. It just seems like everyone's trying to do Nolan's Batman
Exactly,
again,
exactly.
and it's like
Like that's really what has made me sour about Christopher Nolan's Batman and like The Dark Knight is that not so much the movie itself because I like the movie fine, like it's
I love The Dark
entertaining,
Knight. It's one of my
it's well
favorite
made.
movies. Yeah,
It's just a lot of people learned the wrong lessons from it. So like afterwards we got the Amazing Spider-Man, which is trying to be like a Dark Knight for Spider-Man, where it's about like the dark untold story and
that's
like
true.
everything's color graded and like lit more like edgy and like realistically and like just darker and
Yeah, I feel like even the MCU for a while there was
yeah,
doing that. Like Age of Ultron stands out to me as
yeah,
them really kind of getting darker with it. But still throwing in those like really awkward Whedon jokes. I don't know. But
yeah,
now it seems like Marvel has really found their thing, and it's not dark at all, but they hit on dark tones.
yeah, like
Um,
Civil War.
like Civil, even WandaVision, where it's like there's a lot of funny, stupid shit in that show, but it's a pretty heavy show, you know?
Yeah,
Like ultimately, like there's some heavy shit going on in that show. Um so I don't know. I just like DC to like and your central force doesn't have to be Batman either, you know?
yeah, exactly.
You don't have
Like
to start with Batman.
Batman's like the poster boy, but he's not like everything. Like
You shouldn't set your
you
tone
don't,
around Batman.
yeah,
Batman's
don't,
like the outlier of the tone of the DC universe in my
yeah,
opinion.
don't make the mistake that a lot of people give the MCU like flack for, where like everyone has to be connected to Tony Stark somehow. Like, oh, like Spider-Man is just Iron Boy now, or like even in WandaVision, like oh, like there's a part where like it's the Tony Stark missile. Like, don't, which I don't see a problem with that. Like, I
Well,
still see them as like their own, but
that was
like
that was already a thing in
yeah,
Civil
but like
War, so
it was mostly with Spider-Man where people were like, oh, Spider-Man is now too much rooted into like like Iron Man's whole lore that
yeah.
like I really don't want, like you said, DC to kind of base everything around Batman tonally.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was the problem with Man of Steel, where um, they really wanted Man of Steel to be super. They wanted it to be Chris Nolan, but Superman. You know, Chris Nolan's
Like
Batman,
the
but
fact that they
Superman.
called it Man of Steel, like how Dark Knight was called The Dark Knight.
Right. Yeah. And but like it's true though with the Marvel universe, as far as like tone goes, John Favreau really kind of set the groundwork for that entire universe,
Yeah.
at least at first.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely gone off the rails. Now I think like Guardians and Thor Ragnarok, like they're like, okay, do whatever you want now. But like
Yeah.
even still to this day, like that tone of where Iron Man started off, like this is our flat line. This is baseline. This is reality. This is what reality looks like. We could get weird with Guardians and Thor, but even with uh that show, Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's kind of back to that baseline Marvel, like this is the tone
Yeah.
of the series. Where like Man of Steel, you started your tone and it's like this gray scale and like super dark and depressing, and it's like, do you really want to start out your series on like that? That's your tone, like because
Especially with Superman.
that's what you have to do going on. Because even a movie like Shazam, which I like Shazam, it's okay. It's not my favorite movie ever, but like Shazam is a more jokey, funny movie, and like the premise is ridiculous because Shazam is just a ridiculous character. But
Yeah, he's like
because
one of
it's
the first like ever DC heroes.
because it's set in that Snyder verse, or at least they wanted it to be. They never mentioned it again, but
Yeah.
they wanted it to be. So it's still got this like grayscale to it. You know, it's still got this sort of dreary look to it. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
because it's set in that Snyderverse, and it's like we had
Yeah.
that's our baseline, you know?
Yeah. Which I think that's what the studio wanted the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League to do, to like be like their new tonal reset, because like Shazam feels a lot more in like the tone of like that Joss Whedon Justice League than it does like Batman vs Superman.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so does Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, yeah, that movie sucks, man.
No, no,
Yeah,
the thing I always think about with that movie is Pedro Pascal like acting his ass off, trying to be like I want to give you everything, I want to give you the whole world, my son, and the son's like, okay, dad, okay, dad, I
sure.
I I, I want you home, dad.
Any final thoughts?
Uh, yeah, Jared Leto is just not a great Joker. Like Ryan makes a good point that like a lot of time he just leans towards like Jim Carrey. Like in Suicide Squad, he's like, oh, this hugga hugga, and like there's a lot. He tries to read like it's Jim Carrey sometimes, and it's kind of weird. And
Yeah, yeah,
we live in a society. Um, something something I kind of not so much miss, but was always in the back of my mind watching the Snyder cut that was in the original cut, was when Steppenwolf, Steppenwolf is a lot cooler in this version than the original one, because the original one it just felt like the same villain from Wonder Woman, just like a dude in a helmet. Well, this one is like he's like a dude in like full like suit of made of paper clips, and he's like a big monster guy.
such
And
pretty
like
eyes, though.
yeah, he does like you see the emotion and like the
Yeah,
sadness in those eyes. But anyway, um,
just want to stare
so
at
that
him.
one, yeah, he's a lot more threatening and more monstrous, while the other one's just a dude. But in the original cut, he kept talking to the mother boxes, calling them mother, like mother. I will find the other boxes, mother, which he didn't do in this cut, but I kind of wanted him to. He's like, mother, I found the boxes.
I think what I was most disappointed about this Snyder cut is he took out the line. So I hear you talk to fish. He took that
Yeah,
out, and that upsets me.
that's a good trailer line.
Yeah. So I hear you talk to fish. I also don't know why Ben Affleck just sounds like Nick Cage throughout this entire movie. He really does. It's just like
I
I hear you talk to fish.
hear you talk to fish.
Hey, baby girl. Well, that's the review. That's all I got. I got
Yep,
nothing else to say.
same
Um,
here.
Make sure to check out the other stuff, people listening, watching. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
like I don't know if I'm pointing, but like, comment, and subscribe.
Hit the bell.
It's down here.
Hit the
Hit the
bell.
bell to be notified whenever there's a new video.
Yeah, and we'll probably be back for the series review of Falcon Winter Soldier. I imagine.
Yeah.
I imagine we'll be doing that. We've got another thing planned out. I'm still in the process of watching it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It'll take me a minute, but I'll get there.
Sure. Just take your sweet time.
Oh, I will. Bye bye.
Bye.